My name is Casey Koizan. I'm a Dene interdisciplinary artist from Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. The inspiration for this piece came from when I was working at the Diavik Diamond Mine. My job for the week was to kind of measure chemicals or minerals going from one pond to the next, two man-made ponds. And one day, about halfway through the day, I went outside, and across the pond there was a herd of like 50 to 75 caribou, and I just kind of stood there and just watched them for the longest time and was kind of reflecting on things, wondering what was happening. And for me, I came to the conclusion that their migrating patterns were being disrupted. Like, they weren't able to kind of like walk or graze exactly where they wanted to because the mine was there, right? I really like to use technology for my work because a lot of our youth are really implementing technology into their lives, right? Like, children these days can operate, iPads like crazy, whereas like when we were kids, we were eating mud, and I find it's a way to kind of connect with their sort of like interests, right? You can use a lot of technology to create your artwork, to do sort of like anything you want to do. It's interesting because sometimes like something will come out into a render and it's just like, wow, that like turned out way better than I expected. And to be able to play with like light and shadow and fog and to really set like an emotion within this 3D space, I find is really fascinating as well. From the months of like June to mid-July, we have like 24-hour sunlight, and that could be really interesting for people who haven't been up there, like people from the south or whatever who come up to visit. They gotta put like the blackout curtains on the window or like tinfoil on the window to like keep the light out, that sort of thing. So that's a very interesting thing, and to have grown up with that, like to have born up there and to grow up with that, I've learned to kind of listen to my body rather than my mind when it comes time to sleep, right? Because if you're listening to your mind, you're like, okay, the sun's out, I can't sleep, right? Which is why people get insomnia. So the portal's representation to me is not only through a Dene lens, but also like a sci-fi lens, being really fascinated by technology and the evolution of technology. Made me think of a lot of different things, but there's also like the legend of a portal up north. It is said that there's this place, this portal that can connect, that used to connect the Dene and the Dine of the southern states. And I've always been so fascinated by that concept. I've always wanted to see it in person. I wanted to do my own sort of version of the portal, make it look like it was originally a teepee, but then it's been kind of like fabricated through time to have a very like bold sort of sci-fi look to it. Kind of chrome, but also wood at the same time, man-made, but also maybe a bit natural. I just really wanted to make that look very very stark in its place. How there's this desolate sort of like land that's been overrun with a lot of like industry and mining, but that there's this place that these animals can go through for refuge, basically, in order to survive. So there's a few different meanings for it, but really I wanted to just kind of like provide a bit of I guess hope in a way, that even though there's a lot of things going on that influences the environment, we could still find a way to kind of like coexist with the land, the animals, and everything kind of like comes to fruition. If I could step through the portal and it would take me anywhere, I'd like to say a lot of things. I'd like to say things that are made up, places that don't exist, that only exist in my mind or whatever. But if the portal could take me anywhere, it would have to be back home. Like, for numerous reasons, like, with being a son, being a godfather, you know, there comes times where I really miss, you know, either my mom or really miss my godson, especially like, you know, these kids are getting older, you can have a full-on like conversation with them, and that's made me miss them even more. Also because the price of like accommodation and travel to get back up to Yellowknife is like kind of pricey. So if I could just have a portal, just brings me there, you know, for a quick trip or whatever, you know, go have dinner and then kind of portal back to Winnipeg, I'd be good.